Good morning, everyone. Celebrate, clap, enjoy the Sunday morning. It's beautiful out there. Unless you got allergies, then it sucks. But otherwise, it's still a beautiful morning. My name is Al, and I'm going to be your MC today. I'm pleased to welcome you to those to Community Center and those joining on Facebook or on YouTube. Since 2014, Oasis has been the premier secular alternative to faith-based community. We welcome all, regardless of belief, non-belief, race, gender, sexual orientation, identity, or any other trait. We feel the human experience is better when it's shared, and so we are pleased that you're sharing it with us this morning. Normally, this is the time where we would read through our 5 core values, and don't worry, we will on other Sundays, but today we're going to take a little deviation from that and talk about our mission statement, because while we do focus on all of this stuff, just as sort of a reminder of what KC Oasis is all about, and for anybody who's new or watching online who's not familiar, you can be informed on what our mission is. So again, there's our core 5 values, so if you really want to read them, go right ahead. They're here, they're behind you. But we'll do our mission statement, which is up there, which the mission of Oasis is to educate members in the values of humanism, provide social support to the community, produce educational programs for the general public, like the one we're going to go through today, and to engage in acts of charitable service, such as Micah, the Ronald McDonald House Ministry, different things like that. So in case you were curious and didn't know if we had a mission statement, now you know what it is. There you go. All right, speaking of applause, we've got a great speaker today, Fred Whitehead. He's going to be speaking on the Underground Railroad that had a stop over here in Quindaro, Kansas, right across the state line over there. I had no idea that that was true, so I'm definitely interested in learning about that. We've got Caitlyn Grace, who's going to be our musical guest. And yes, we will be talking about, Star Wars, because it's May the 4th, right? So May the 4th be with everybody. And if not, well, then it's going to be with you anyway, right? I'm sorry, I don't have any Star Wars t-shirts, or I would have worn one, so I'm very disappointed in myself. All right, speaking of musicians, Caitlyn, while she comes up and we tell you a little bit about her, Caitlyn is a singer-songwriter who crafts dreamy indie pop melodies that serve as a vehicle for ponderous lyrics. She takes inspiration from the melancholic turn-of-the-century sound of Elliott Smith, The Sundays, Fiona Apple, as well as contemporary work of Ethel Kill, I can't read, and Phoebe Bridgers. And in March 2024, she released her debut single, Faithful, as a precursor to her EP, Archangel. So please give a big welcome to Caitlyn Grace.
Hi, everyone. I'm Caitlyn. Thank you for the introduction. I'm going to be singing a few songs off my new EP, Archangel, which is kind of an exploration of my personal journey with faith and kind of redefining what that can mean for me, not necessarily in a religious sense. So this first song is called Eve's Blues, and it's kind of about growing up in the church as a young woman and, I don't know, kind of feeling undervalued in some ways compared to my male counterparts.
That's why it's hard
I know what you don't, and I've done what you won't. The things I've seen would drive you to violence. Recital of my final verse. Do I have your permission? 'Cause these lungs and this tongue, oh, surely they are cursed. I'll take them with me to perdition. It must be hard to heal the broken youth and separate the truth from the daughters. That's why it's so hard for me to tell you this town ain't big enough for both of us. It only needs one martyr. Thank you. All right, this next song is called Bunk Bed, and it's kind of, I don't know, it's just about past selves and just growing up and looking back on even who you were a year ago and being like, that's a totally different person. I sleep on top of a 22-decker bunk bed with all of the girls I've been before. They put on their nightgowns and toss, turn, and lie down to rest their heads. And leave all their dresses piled up on my floor. So I can't clean up after you, even if I wanted to. I can't clean up after you. I've got work to do. Dressing room mirror can't see through the tears she cries. Why do we have to change? In every direction, a different reflection in every size. But she just wants one that stays the same. So I can't get undressed for you, even if I wanted to. I can't get undressed for you. I've got work to do.
Please go ahead and follow Caitlyn on Instagram or on her website there. You can find out more information on there. And don't forget, we have the cash strip as well as Venmo over there. Salt Rock with 3 S's? Yep. Yeah, awesome. Another round of applause for Caitlyn. Just had one of those weird moments when I read Turn of the Century and then Fiona Apple. And I'm like, no, Turn of the Century is when they had like horse-drawn buggies, not like 1999. It just doesn't seem right. All right. Something that is right, though, is some of the birthdays that we're going to celebrate. One of them back there is Princess Leia, Zoe Randolph. And on the 8th, we have 2, Jason Radford and David Black. Right there. All right. Does anyone else have any birthdays, anniversaries, anything they'd like to celebrate? Yes?
Our anniversary is Tuesday, 14
14
years.
years. All right. Speaking of celebrating, and Jason Radford, he is our Volunteer of the Week, well deserved. Jason really does make every Sunday here possible with what he does. He seeks out and books our musical guests. He arrives at Oasis every Sunday early at 9:30 to set up all his AV, make sure the laptop's here, make sure all the audio equipment is going on with the team there. He makes sure that all the multimedia needs are met. He takes initiative to solve problems before they become a problem. And thankfully, he has great cat herding skills, because otherwise we'd all be screwed. So definitely a big round of applause for Jason and all that he does for us. He also fixes the slides that I screw up during the week when I prepare them. So. All right. In the spirit of Oasis values, human hands solve human problems. See, we did read some of the core values, right? Our core response team helps us take care of each other. So this week, a couple of community members are recovering from surgery. John Muter, if you guys went out to the Kaufman Center, he was the one that picked the show that we went to. John is a great guy, so he's recovering from surgery. As well as Tara McNaughton had some unexpected eye surgery on Friday. So please check in on him, let him know that you're thinking of him. And also, Jason is now looking for a new job in client service or IT help desk since his Department of Education job was removed thanks to President Cheeto. So you can connect with them on LinkedIn for referrals and recommendations. So we also have some upcoming events. Today, we'll be going to the Ronald McDonald House starting at around 3:30. Going to be doing some meal prep from 3:30. Dinner will be served at 5. And there is room for more volunteers. So if you would like to be able to do that this afternoon, please feel free to do so. Just RSVP on the event there. And that's going to be at 2401 Gillum Road.
Can I say something?
Absolutely. Denise?
Volunteering, in the Facebook event on the discussion tab, there's parking instructions and where you need to go. So take a look at that if you're volunteering today.
Yep. So there is instructions for parking on the Facebook page. So if you're going to go there, make sure you follow those parking instructions. So please take a look at that. Go over there. On the discussion tab. So, yep. All right. And we also have game night. That's going to be on not this Thursday, next Thursday, May 15th, from 7 to 9 here in the KC Oasis Community Center. So bring your favorite board games, a snack to share, roll the dice, shuffle the cards, and make some great memories together. And Ethan, who is, I saw him earlier right there, he is your primary point of contact for all that. So. And we still need a few more volunteers for the Volker Homes Tour. KC Oasis is the home base for the Volker Tours this year. So everyone in the neighborhood here is going to be going on a tour, is going to start their tour here, and we need 3 more volunteers at the refreshment table. Sarah Geelan can be contacted if you got any questions on that. Denise is volunteering for one of the volunteers for the 12 to 3 shift, and then we need 2 for the 9 to 12 and 1 more for the 12 to 3. So, and again, that's going to be on May 17th. That's not this coming Saturday, but the following Saturday. And we also have Memorial Day picnic. I think there was a location change from what it was previously. So the new location is going to be at 4798 Wyoming Street. There won't be a Sunday gathering over here. Instead, we'll be over there at the park enjoying some beverages, some drinks, some hopefully nice weather and sunshine, and of course, you're just hanging out and bullshitting and enjoying each other's company. So And join us for fun and bring lawn chairs, a dish to pass, and it's at Westwood Park, about 6 blocks south of here. So that'll be the location for there. And a little further down the road, August 7th, 8th, and 9th is going to be our second annual rummage sale. So if you have items available, good condition, that you're willing and looking forward to part ways with, this would be a great way to help raise money for the Oasis. No clothes or books. I think that was, Julie mentioned that last week as well, that those don't really sell well. So other items that you have that may be good, but the books and clothes, donate to Micah or something else, or bring other items, and bring items here. And then we can prepare for all that. And again, it's the beginning of August that the rummage sale will do, but can they start bringing items in now? Or, yep, so you can start bringing in items now. So as you're going through some of your spring cleaning and things and saying, this is great, but I don't need it anymore, bring it this way. All right, and if you want to know all the other stuff that's going on, because there is always other stuff that's going on, we have a thing on our site. You can sign up for the newsletter, which is sent out every week. There's not a whole bunch of junk and spam. It only comes out once a week. It's got great information, including additional content information and instructions for things going on. So if you want to stay plugged in for all the things going on, please sign up for the newsletter there. All right. Now we are going to have our community moment. So Will Manning is going to be speaking. His 3 words are rhythmic, analog, and I'm not even going to try the other one, amalgam. And there we go. And he says he makes things more difficult than they need to be, as I've just proven. So.
Thank you. So this community moment comes by request, thanks to Roger Pick. We're going to talk about Star Wars. May the 4th be with you. Yeah. So I'm going to talk specifically about A New Hope, which is episode 4, the first time that Star Wars got released to movie studios. So Star Wars was a movie that almost did not get made, almost stopped getting made, and almost certainly was different than George Lucas intended. So George Lucas is the writer-director, the main creative force behind the film. Let's see. But before I tell that story, I want to tell a little bit of a story about Hollywood in general. So this is part of the story of how Star Wars ended up the way it was. So guess how many successful major motion pictures were sci-fi films about space opera before Star Wars? There were none. It was not a bankable genre. Old Hollywood loved bankable genres. So Hollywood was now competing with television. The old formulas were less profitable. Movie studios were downsizing and restructuring and getting bought and sold. It was a tumultuous time. The Fed broke up the ownership of movie theaters from movie studios, because it's like, you know, they blew up the movie industry, kind of, and it was like refinding itself, and it was leaving more, they were more desperate and willing to be more experimental, and this was one of those experiments. So as George Lucas was leaving film school, let's see, this is the guy. As George Lucas was leaving film school, he set up a motion picture company with a guy you might have heard of, Francis Ford Coppola. Weird that he was well networked. And they tried to release one sci-fi movie first before Star Wars. It was infamous. It's a movie that, if I tell you the title, you won't even remember it. THX 1138. It just screams blockbuster, right? So that movie went so bad, it bankrupted his company. So right away, initial thing he tries fails. But Francis Ford Coppola, who most people know from Godfather, he gives George Lucas a bet. It's like, hey man, why don't you try to do something that's not, you know, robots and creatures? Just do something outside of what you've done before. Like maybe try a comedy. And so he does. He tries to make a comedy, and it is American Graffiti. Now this movie, a lot of people liked it. It made a lot of money. It won a lot of awards, and George Lucas got a little bit of a positive name for himself because of a bet. And he didn't really want to do it other than the fact that to prove that he could to Francis Ford Coppola. So, thing one, if Francis Ford Coppola never would have bet him, he never would have had the economic clout to do all these follow-up things. So that's linchpin one. Let's see. So at this point, this guy right here, Alan Ladd Jr., loved American Graffiti. This guy happened to be the president of 20th Century Fox Studios at the time. So one guy had to fall in love with his first movie, American Graffiti. George Lucas shopped around the Star Wars script to multiple motion picture studios. They all turned him down, except for this guy. So this guy was another linchpin. If this guy had been different, we wouldn't have got it made. So Alan Ladd Jr. saw the script of Star Wars and was like, man, I love it that you love this. I don't understand it, but I have faith in you, so go make your movie. Here's a couple $1 million. So they had a budget, and they started. And George kind of bluffed. His script had 365 special effects shots, most of which had never been done before. And he basically told this guy to his face, yeah, we know how to do this. We'll figure it out. And he did not. He actually just knew that I know some smart people. We have some money. We'll make it happen. So there was a carcass of a movie studio industry. He was buying up old pieces of equipment from major studios for pennies on the dollar, and he reformed a company, ILM, Industrial Light and Magic, specifically to realize his vision of special effects for this film. I'm not going to dive a ton into that, but just know that George was highly uncertain about how he was going to make this money with these millions of dollars with this new company that he was also starting as he was making this movie. So in the beginning, he started filming in Tunisia, which is North Africa. The weather was terrible. They instantly went over budget, behind. There was a lot of filming in London. Things were not going their way. Again, he's doing a lot of experimental things. There's a lot of the dialogue was going to be from Darth Vader later, so it didn't even sound right to our ears. A lot of people that was working on it, they didn't have faith in the project. If you're working in the industry, most of the things you worked on weren't successful. There wasn't a buzz of success around this movie at all. George Lucas was openly mocked about his dialogue choices by the actors on set. So here's a picture of George with all of his Industrial Light and Magic toys behind him. A lot of it is more than just episode 4, but this was, a picture from years later. But all this stuff and this company that he made, if he didn't have the right people in the right places as he was making this film that invented a lot of new techniques for shooting models on cameras that were robotic arms and a lot of lighting and special effects, they would try stuff, it wouldn't work. They would try stuff, it wouldn't work. They'd try stuff, that kind of worked, okay, ship it, that kind of thing. So at one point in time, he gets a call from Alan Ladd Jr. At this point, he's way over budget, they're already way late, and the conversation went something like this. Hey, George, the board of directors isn't really happy with how things are going. I've got another meeting in 1 week. I'm going to have to tell them that you're no longer in production. Do you think you can get it done in a week? George, to his credit, was like, he could see this movie is either going to die or I got to do it fast. So it's basically like, yeah, we can get it done in a week, but if you were just give me, we're going to have to hire 3 crews. We're going to have to work around the clock, and it's going to cost you a heck of a lot more money if you just gave me more time. But we can try to do it in a week. They ended up doing it in a week. So what that meant was they sped through. He made lots of sacrifices and compromises, and he really wasn't happy with the work that was getting done, but he got it done. And he had to trust a lot of other people to make a lot of choices because the other 2 crews didn't have him as the director. So when he got back from filming in London and he got back to California, he learned that his special effects team that he hired, ILM, had finished 2 of the 365 special effects shots, and they had blown through 1 million of their $2 million special effects budget. And that understanding of how bad this project was going sent him to the hospital with chest pains. So he was diagnosed with hypertension and exhaustion, and basically needed to recover from that for a few days. And then when he started to see what his editor was working with, and again, your project's already going terrible. What does he do? He fires his editor. So a lot of the editor work was already done, and he's like, no, we can't use this, scrap it. I'm going to have to do this. And he also brought on board 2 other editors and his wife at the time. This is Marcia Lucas. She did a lot of work. She was making a lot of the choices for what we experience as what specific shots were chosen, when do you cut, and anyway, a lot of people were doing a lot of other work besides George Lucas. So eventually, he has a screening for limited friends, and it was a version of the film with no special effects, no John Williams music, no James Earl Jones voice. and it was not universally loved by his other friends. It's like some people like Steven Spielberg instantly loved it, and he had faith in the vision that George Lucas would be both financially rewarded, and it was a great film. But he was in the minority. George Lucas was not confident about the product. He was very close to his material, and the only thing he ever saw was all the compromises and things he didn't like about his film, hence all of the millions of revisions that he did. But when Star Wars was released, it was released in only a handful of theaters, like 20-something. Of course, it instantly sold out. But George retreated to a vacation with Steven Spielberg to almost hide from the news about it because he was not confident about it. And then it went on to have multiple theatric runs, set box office records. But I guess the biggest takeaway that I kind of want to also say is the movie that we saw and loved benefited from the collaborative work of a lot of other people helping, and he needed to be forced into that position, but I would say that it's a good example of helping hands, and a lot of the dialogue and choices that subsequently we've seen when George Lucas has too much control is not as good. And like having people help you is good. And so whenever I'm thinking of creative projects, I'm thinking of, yes, take more advice from other people and get help from outside sources. And that's my takeaway. So, and that's kind of how Star Wars got made. Thank you.
Thank you. Awesome. With all the money that movie's made, all the merchandising, all the stuff, it's hard to imagine it start like that. Super interesting. All right. We're going to get ready to go on a coffee break here, so we're going to take the next 20 minutes, meet somebody that you haven't, extend a hand, see somebody that you haven't seen in a long time, grab some coffee, some donuts back there, enjoy, and we will see you back here in about 20 minutes. So enjoy. See you soon.
No more, no more, it cannot wait. I'm yours. Open up your mind.
And welcome back. Coffee break's over. You got to put your coffee away if you haven't drank it. Too late, sorry. So, while our musician is coming back up, I did want to say we did miss one anniversary, and that's Kirsten and Emily, so let's give them a round of applause as well. And all right, Caitlyn, pop quiz time. What inspired you to get into music?
I've kind of been making up little songs ever since I could form words. My dad really inspired me to start playing guitar. And my mom also, she plays bass, so it was kind of in the family for a while, so I just kind of picked it up.
Sweet.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you. Big round of applause.
All right. This song is, oh, let me not step on my cord. Whoop. Okay. This song is called Heaven Hotline. About doing something drastic, finding the chaos and the pragmatic. And I'm imagining my face on Nightline, a shitty photo pulled from somebody's timeline. And I wish I could have chosen it, or at least advised, but it's too late to decide how we're immortalized now. Till it hits the wall. I've gotta say I admire your gall, 'cause it must take some effort to be unremarkable. But I'd never say that out loud. I'm not you and your crowd. I'm calling from earth to heaven above. It's long distance, but I have just enough to beg for blessings of truth and love. So for the love of all that's holy, will someone please pick up? Who are you? And there's no one to answer to. Who are you? And there's no one to answer to. Who sowed the seeds? Who spilt the blood? Who made disease and who sent the flood? And who made minds to wonder why? Who made me cry? Who sowed the seeds? Who spilt the blood? Who made disease and who sent the flood? And who made minds to wonder why? Who made me cry? And who sowed the seeds? Who spilt the blood? Who made disease and who sent the flood and who made minds to wonder why? Who made me cry? And who sowed the seeds, who spilled the blood? Who made disease and who sent the flood? And who made what? I don't care to learn, 'cause we are not on speaking terms. And who are you? And there's no one to answer to. Who are you? And there's no one to answer to. Thank you.
Definitely some thought-provoking lyrics. All right. We are going to have our speaker, Fred Whitehead, come up. And while he's doing that, I'll read our disclaimer here. Our program is designed to generate conversation and engage our powers of reasons. It's not as a forum to start debates. The following presentation has been prepared by our speaker and not by Casey Oasis. So please respect the view of our speaker. And if you have any questions, a Q&A portion will follow. Fred Whitehead is a historian who has been instrumental in preserving the Quindaro site in Kansas City, Kansas. He has worked to save the ruins from a proposed landfill and has been involved in educational programs and archaeological excavations that have helped to uncover the historical significance of the site. He is an independent scholar and publisher who has focused on the grassroots and progressive movements in the Midwest. Welcome, Fred Whitehead.
Okay.
Here's the slide deck, and this is to go.
Got it. Great. Well, it's always a pleasure to visit Oasis and to be invited to speak here. I think I've done this a few times, and I was pleased to learn that everything is archived on YouTube, so that can be shared more widely. I've always been fond of Oasis, though I don't come very often, partly because of the name. You really are an oasis in a desert surrounding us. And I'm reminded of the comment of a French politician that America was the only society to go from barbarism to decadence without civilization in between. You are refuting that statement by maintaining civilization in the midst of what can only be described as decadence. I do have an announcement before getting into my talk. In a couple of weeks, on May 18th, I'm giving a talk for the Community of Reason, which meets at UMKC, on the 500th anniversary of the German Peasant War of 1525. I've always thought, well, we should remember things every 500 years. So if you do a website, a Google search for Kansas City Community of Reason, in a few days there should be an announcement of the talk and the time and the place. And if all goes well, it should be viewable by Zoom. And there will be a link to the Zoom presentation on the announcement that you should find. Or you can get in touch with me. I'm on Facebook. So anyway, I would direct your attention to this. If you're not familiar with the Peasant War, it was at the time of the Reformation, Martin Luther and all that. And the peasants, I can't try to talk about the reasons for the revolt, but they rose up against their feudal masters, and it was the largest revolutionary movement in Europe before the French Revolution. And so it was quite an amazing event. And as far as I know, the Kansas City Talk is the only commemoration that's going to happen in the United States. So it's an unusual opportunity to learn more about it. Anyway, my talk today is on Quindaro. Let's see, make sure I can get this. Which is was a station on the Underground Railroad. Everyone knows what the Underground Railroad was, right? Okay. Well, not everybody's nodding, so we'll get into the explanation here. A historian friend of mine, Leo Oliva, who's a famous guy in terms of the Santa Fe Trail story, pointed out to me that Kansas was actually entirely Indian territory before 1854. The Kansas-Nebraska Act provided for the opening of Kansas and Nebraska to white settlement. And it was then that places like Lawrence and Topeka and so on were established. It was premised on the idea of squatter sovereignty. That is, those who lived in the territory would determine its government, including the controversial question of slavery. This didn't really help it, because what happened was border ruffians, which you see in this picture, went over into Kansas at election time, set up a tent, called it a city, and voted for a pro-slavery government and constitution. This led to violent conflict. Kansas became known as Bleeding Kansas. There were people being shot down and, in their houses and attacked and so forth on both sides. The town of Lawrence was attacked in 1856 and burned down most of the city, leaving only a ruin. When I was a kid, they used to teach Kansas history in the schools, believe it or not. And I remember seeing in one of our books this image, Liberty, the fair maid of Kansas, in the hands of the border ruffians. And it shows Kansas suffering under the reign of terror of these pro-slavery people. And what amazed me was at the bottom right, you see a white man scalping somebody. It was a gruesome image for a little kid to see, and I thought it impressed on me how terrible this conflict must have been. Well, what led to the development of Quindaro, the town of Quindaro, was other towns in Kansas, such as Leavenworth and Atchison, were kind of in the hands of either pro-slavery people or those who were indifferent to the issue. And so towns like Lawrence were growing, and they needed some way to have a safe place to transport goods and so forth into Kansas. So the town of Quindaro, which is right on the Missouri River, as you see here, in what's now Kansas City, Kansas, was established on January the 1st of 1857. And one of those involved in the town was William Walker, whom you see with his wife. William Walker was with the Wyandot Nation. The Wyandot Nation, by the way, still exists in Kansas. There's the Wyandot Nation in Oklahoma, but there's another group called the Wyandot Nation of Kansas, which has a wonderful website that I recommend to anybody who wants to get more about that story, part of the story. Well, the town Quindaro was named after named after a Wyandot woman whose name was Quindaro, and the word itself means in Wyandotte, it means a bundle of sticks, which is interpreted to mean, in unity there is strength. So this was the town site, and the town actually grew up very quickly in 1857. This is actually Nancy Quindaro Brown Guthrie, the woman for whom the town is named. And this is her husband, a white man, Abelard Guthrie, who took the cause of Quindaro to the Congress in D.C., or District of Columbia. He was known as the man with two brains because though he was a white man, he defended the cause of the Indians, in particular the Wyandottes in this town. So the Wyandotte Nation and Wyandotte individuals were very much involved in the town of Quindaro. This is a copy of the bond, if you like, or a share that people bought shares in the development of the town and so on. There was a newspaper there called the Quindaro Chendewan, which lasted only 1 year, but which still exists. You could read it. And the assistant editor was this woman, Clarina Nichols, who was from New England. She was very much an abolitionist, that is opposed to slavery, and she provided a safe place in her house for an escaped slave, and thus was part of the Underground Railroad. Now, when these slaves escaped out of Missouri, Parkville was just across the river, they didn't stay in Quindaro because it was too dangerous. They went on to Lawrence, and many of them went on to Canada. But Clarina was part of the Underground Railroad. Another part of the Underground Railroad was Benjamin Franklin Mudge, who had been mayor of Lynn, Massachusetts. He was a geologist, and he was a school teacher in Quindaro. Well, there were slave catchers that came over from Missouri into Quindaro trying to find escaped slaves. They knocked on his door, and he fended them off with his sons with their guns, and they said, "You'll have to take us by force if you want to capture the slave." So there was an actual documented history of the operation of the Underground Railroad in Quindaro. Coming of freedom in the decade of the Civil War. What happened at the beginning of the war, which was 1861, a lot of the population, the male population of Quindaro, enlisted in the Union Army. And they enlisted in the black regiments from Kansas. And that sort of hurt the population of the town because the women and children didn't want to stay there. So at that time, much of the town was abandoned. But later, after the Civil War, people in the town decided to start a university for the freedmen, that is the freed blacks, and it was called Western University. And this is some of their buildings. It was said to be the first African American university west of the Mississippi. I think that may not be right because Lincoln University in Jefferson City was established around this, even a bit earlier. But Western University had it was a small school, and it largely taught trades, carpentry, and so forth. But they also had a music department, and there's some very famous people who were graduates of Western University. They went on for careers in music, and they even had a school of song and so forth. This is kind of a description of Western University. It was allied with and supported by the African Methodist Episcopal Church. So it had a kind of church connection in that way. Well, this is another photograph, and the statue that you see in this photograph is the abolitionist Captain John Brown, who, of course, had been, he was involved in the Kansas fight in the 1850s to save Lawrence from being attacked, and, of course, the famous raid on Harper's Ferry, after which he was hanged for treason. Well, this statue was erected in 1911 and situated at the Western University campus. It was the first statue of John Brown in the world, and it was organized by an interesting campaign called the Washerwomen's Contribution. And there were all these African American women around the country who would send in their quarters. Can you still hear me? Okay. They would send in, quarters and dimes, and in a way they collected enough money for this statue, which was carved in Italy. I interviewed two men who were present at the dedication in 1911. Can you imagine? So there's a long history in Quindaro, and I'm kind of just hitting the highlights in this presentation. This is a photograph of one of the ruins of the buildings. This was a hotel during the kind of boom times in Quindaro. And what happened over the course of time, since the town was abandoned, people would go up there and just help themselves to the stone. And so all around Kansas City, Kansas, and maybe elsewhere, there's stone that was actually taken from the Quindaro site. Here's another photograph. You can see it's right on the edge of the river. This was another old building now demolished in the Quindaro site. And there was a school there, it was built in the 1930s under the New Deal. And it's now a community center. This building is still there. So you can see this. If you go north on 27th Street in Kansas City, Kansas, past the interstate, you'll arrive at the Quindaro site, and you can see this building. Well, in 1982, there was a proposal from the city and the AME Church, which owned both parts of the land, to put a landfill on the site of Quindaro. Well, this immediately provoked a response from the community. People filed a lawsuit in state court. And I said to those who filed the suit, I said, that's a good idea, but you're probably going to lose. And they did lose in the Kansas Supreme Court. But I said, that doesn't matter. We have to oppose it anyway. And so one of the provisions of the landfill agreement was that whenever there's going to be anything that destroys a site, there has to be an archaeological excavation of this site beforehand. It's federal law. And so in 1987, suddenly, in these excavations, they were revealed the original buildings of Quindaro, which were all covered up with sand and dirt and so on. And so this became a story in the New York Times and the Kansas City Star and so forth, and it galvanized more community resistance because we wanted to, we realized that it was like Pompeii or something as far as Kansas historic sites. And we, in the court after 1987, do you remember when people gave slide talks that you had to have the carousel projector and lug that thing around. Well, we put together a script and we put together a slideshow, and we took it around. People in our group showed it probably hundreds of times all around Kansas City. And so I'm very appreciative of the kind of easy, the high tech that we have today. Those carousels were kind of tricky, sometimes they would jam and so forth. But anyway, we showed this, gave this talk all over the metro area. And the city at one point said, well, it's time, we've had enough discussion. The city manager, Dave Isbell, said, it's a done deal. And of course we said, well, to us, it's not a done deal. And so people, they were going to bring the bulldozers in. And so we sort of put the word out that people should come and prepare to resist this. And people showed up. I mean, we didn't have any real organization. People came with tents and stuff and started setting up campsites in this area, and they were prepared to sit down in front of the bulldozers. And so, curiously enough, the city soon backed down. The deal was undone. And after several more years, there was this overlook, which you'll find at the end of 27th Street, where you can see down into the Quindaro, the original town site. It's quite a nice little structure, and you can see Parkville across the river, and there's sort of a pathway down there, but none of the structures are there's no signage down there or anything like that. So there's still work that needs to be done. Well, after more efforts, curiously enough, politicians of both parties worked together. You see President Congressman Emanuel Cleaver there. Next to him is former Senator, United States Senator from Kansas, Roberts. And the fellow with the black beard is Marvin Robinson, who was in the state legislature, very close friend of mine, and who died last year way too early of cancer. But these people, and Sharice Davids is in this photograph. So these people from different political parties actually cooperated on something. And the occasion was to declare marking this as a national commemorative site, which gives it a kind of official designation. So there's still more work that needs to be done there, but it is the culmination of many years of determined effort. And something that I really should have included in this presentation was the story of the Conley sisters. And they were three sisters who were Wyandottes, and they're right next to the library in downtown Kansas City, Kansas, is the old Wyandotte Cemetery. Well, starting in the 1890s, there was a plan to do away with the cemetery, and so these Conley sisters put a little cabin on this site, armed themselves with a shotgun, and Lida Conley, who was one of the three, became an attorney, and she argued this case all the way to the United States Supreme Court, where they lost. And they still wouldn't leave. And I always included the Conley story in the background as to why, no matter what the Kansas Supreme Court said or any of that, we would hang in there to the end. So here is this kind of beat up old blue collar town of Kansas City, Kansas, that has really an inspiring story that is deeply connected to American history. A couple of years ago, there was an entire issue of the State Historical Journal devoted to Quindaro. And there's a biography of Clarina Nichols that's excellent, written by a local woman, Diane Eckhoff. There's a museum there, which sadly has closed because the roof is deteriorated. This was the house of the former caretaker of Western University. It's one of the only actual buildings that was connected with the university. So the things that they had in the house have had to be taken away to storage, but it's still hope that the building can be saved. Well, here's the statue of John Brown. It says on the, you can't really read it here, but it says below on the front, erected to the memory of John Brown by a grateful people. Questions?
Hi, you mentioned that the name Quindaro refers to a bundle of sticks wrapped together to symbolize strength. I believe the Iroquois further east had a similar parable. Is there any connection between them that you know of?
Well, I think the Iroquois, the Wyandots were a different group. They were Hurons, and the Iroquois is a different tribal group. That doesn't mean that they didn't share stories or have certain, I think it was Tecumseh who said, if we just, every finger is weak, but if they become a fist, then they're strong. And so there's different, when you look at Indian culture, there's ways of taking these things to have a meaning that is important. I mean, that's ethical and political in a way. Yeah. But I don't know that there's what a specific connection to the story. I know. Yeah. Anyone else?
I've been to the area. I don't remember seeing a statue. Is it still there? And if not, what happened to it?
I'm sorry?
I've been to that area. I don't remember ever seeing that statue of John Brown. Is it still in existence? And if not,
Oh, yeah.
what happened to it?
If you go north on 27th Street, I really should have a map here, a little map so you can see. But if you go, you know how the interstate, what is it, 635 cuts through there, north of Leavenworth Road? Well, if you get off that at Leavenworth Road, go east a little ways, you'll find 27th Street. And if you go north on 27th Street, you'll run into the statue. And there's a nice plaza for it that was put up during the bicentennial with plaques. They had bronze plaques for a while, and somebody stole them. And now they're steel, and nobody has stolen the plaques. So the statue is still there. It's been attacked. It's been defaced. It's been, people wrote obscenities on it. And curiously enough, there was a man a police officer in Kansas City, Kansas, who went up and fixed the statue. He painted it, and so that these things that somebody wrote up there are, covered over. But I just found out about this in 1977 by accident. I picked up a little advertising newspaper. They used to be around, they'd be free, and it had a little story about this John Brown statue. Well, I'm a big fan of John Brown, so went up there, and there it was. And I've taken people all over the world to see this thing. I mean, 1983, there was a Russian documentary television crew that came, and I was throwing them around Kansas City. I said, I have to go up there. And one of their guys said, my first time in America, a place like this. So it was, it has its own kind of, if you want to have a nice spring afternoon, drive up there and see the statue. If the Vernon Center's open, stop in and say hello, because they do have a small museum in that one. So that's in the Vernon Center. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I had the same thing where I tried to go look in the area, but it was probably before the installation was done.
Oh.
Are there any remnants of the old buildings there? And, sorry, 2 questions. Any hope for getting the museum back open?
I'm sorry? I didn't quite hear it.
Are there any remnants of the original buildings? I've gone to the area before and I saw a couple of the plaques, but nothing much else there. So any chance that there's any remnants of the original buildings, and is there any hope of getting the museum back open with the roof problem?
Well, the best way would, the Vernon Center is called the Vernon Multipurpose Center. And if maybe they're on the Google or something, you might find, or if you just drive up there, it's a nutrition center. They fix food for elderly people, and they're probably open most middle of the day. And the people there can provide some information about the current situation. But as far as I know, the only actual building above ground is the caretaker's house. And as far as funding, I'm not sure. It's Newt Gingrich of Georgia was actually one of those in Congress who was instrumental in starting a national underground railroad project under the federal government. But he said, now we're not going to spend any federal money on this. So you say, well, okay, you declared it was a national project, but you wouldn't spend any money. But what happened was with the excavations, when they were uncovered, and they were quite extensive. I mean, they went, it wasn't just a few, it was the whole town that they found out this is where the newspaper was, this is where the hotel was. They found all this. But they sort of backfilled it later, because if you leave it open to the elements, it's going to deteriorate and literally collapse. So I think a lot of those have been filled in now. At some point, they need to be re-excavated and stabilized and have a proper, signage down there where they can tell where it was. Yes, ma'am.
I just looked up, there's a walking tour that you can pay to join. They have one next Saturday.
Yeah, it's Kansas City Urban Hikes, and it's really cool.
Kansas City Urban Hikes has a Quindaro tour.
Okay, so if you're doing a Google search for that?
It's on TripAdvisor.
Okay. Well, there's a lot about Quindaro on the internet, and so it's yes, ma'am.
So, since it's a stop on the Underground Railroad, is there evidence to show what the actual stops were? Were they people's houses? Was it the school? Where were the actual stops?
Right. When they excavated, they excavated the site in 1987, and I went up there, and they were. I met the archaeologist who was doing it, and so he pointed out Clarissa Nichols' house, and she had a cistern in the house. What people did was, if it rained, the water would go into the cistern, and that was their source of water. And but it would sometimes be sort of dry, not much. And this young woman who was an escaping slave was kept in that cistern by Clarissa Nichols. And, it was one of the archaeological experts at the Kansas State Historical Society said, all this about the Underground Railroad is just folklore. And I said, why don't you read your own publications? Because Clorinda Nichols wrote letters about this, and Benjamin Franklin Mudge wrote a letter about his experiences. So it was one of those weird things that the people that were sort of in charge of these things didn't really do their job. And I mean, it was a lesson to me that first of all, you don't give up, and secondly, you do your homework, and thirdly, you hang in there. I mean, you just persist. And one of the few instances where I was actually proven right. And we need a few successes in life in the face of all of our failures and so on. Yeah. Yes?
All right. Any more questions? Nope.
When did Quindaro first become a way station on the Underground Railroad?
When did Quindaro become a station on the Underground Railroad? Well, I would say 58, 57, because Clorinda Nichols talks about other people who were supporting this project, and I'm not sure we know where they lived up there. We know where she lived, and I don't know where Mudge lived, but I'm sorry, your question was?
When did it become a stop on the Underground Railroad?
If you go to the Kansas Historical Quarterly, which you will find in the library, Clorinda Nichols' letters and so on, and her editorials and so on, were published in different issues over 2 years. And there's where you'll find her letters talking about this. I mean, that gives you the exact date. And so it wasn't a huge site, but it was certainly a documented site on the station on the Underground Railroad. Yeah. One more.
So when the next step from Quindaro was west or north? The next step from Quindaro.
Well, it is now a national commemorative site, which has a certain. I mean, it's a federal government designation. The idea has been, and Sharice Davis and Cleaver and the others were supportive of this. It should be a National Historic Landmark, which is the top designation. And that, it's a matter of status or whatever, but it could mean more money going into it. There ought to be a visitor center, or at least maybe supporting the ones that exist so they survive, the two that are privately owned. But the problem, to be candid, has been that we had a lot of community support, but it was not well organized. And I was in Charleston, South Carolina one time, and I happened to meet there was a doctor's office there, and he was a urologist, and he was coming. It was the actual doctor himself came out of his office at lunch, and I said hello, and he said, "Here's something you should go see. You should go see the Avery Institute." Well, the Avery Institute was a sort of college or school that was established for freed blacks after the Civil War in Charleston, South Carolina. Well, they converted this thing into a community center. They had a staff. They had exhibits. It was all done through state of South Carolina money. And I came back to Kansas City, and I said, well, that's kind of what we need here, or something like that, where it was a black senator from South Carolina, from Charleston, who got it through the state legislature. And I said, how is it that Kansas can't do what South Carolina is doing? And I sort of irritated some people, I guess, a little bit, but that's always been a problem, is that there's a kind of large grassroots support, but not very well organized. So, but anyway, thank you all.
Thank you very much,
for
Fred.
this
One of our next talks will have to be on the old history when the two parties could work together. That seemed very interesting of what that would have been like. So,
Well, you might ask Cleaver and Davids to come. I mean, they really, and Senator Robbins is retired now, but I have to say I was inspired. They were surprised themselves. They said, you know, here we are, we actually accomplished something. And I said, well, yeah, good. Thank you
you
all
very much, Fred. All right. And while our musician is coming back to the stage, I want to remind everybody that Kansas City Oasis is a 501c3 nonprofit run solely on donations and volunteers. So if you like today's topic and music, please consider donating through our kcoasis.org/donate or through Venmo, and recurring donations are for the best. Caitlyn?
Thank you. All right, I have one more song. I just want to thank you guys for having me and for the wonderful presentations that I got to see. That was really cool. Always fun to learn something for free, too. So this last song is called Faithful, 2 words. All right. My own are the only words that console me. I'm feeling fine in a solipsist autopsy. One day I'll be worse off dead if I say so. The only thing over my head will be a halo. I'll be your cool and down to earth little angel. It's such a pain though, but we'll stay faithful. Ulterior motives I never noticed. By now you should know this is not the time for throwing out your guesses. The subliminal message says everything the rest. It'll settle for a better score when you remind me I can count higher than 490. I only hear them closing doors when they're behind me. Better to be late than to be untimely. Today I am worse off dead, 'cause I say so. The only thing over my head is a halo. I'll be your cool and down to earth little angel. It's such a pain though, but we'll stay faithful. Thank you so much.
And remember, Venmo, our cash tip, definitely show your love for Caitlyn. Afterwards, we're going to be going to lunch over at Tanner's, 39th and Rainbow over there. So please feel free to join us over there. And if you see anything on the floor that wasn't there before, like the coffee cup that I left over there, please feel free to pick it up and take it on the way out. So we can, again, this is all volunteers, and so that's something we can all volunteer and do, which is just clean up after our little area. And next week, we are going to have Paul Benson talking about science in the support of art history. We're going to have Colton Cox as our musical guest, and Roger will be doing our community moment. So look forward to that next week. And See you guys soon.